Other recent research published by the UT Southwestern Medical Center found that with even younger pregnant patients, pregnancy before age 16 increases long term health complications for girls and their babies. In terms of this extremely small, vulnerable population, researchers found that these girls are likely to have more limited prenatal care, which is absolutely the case with young girls in a detention center where they don't even have access to nearby medical care to treat these kinds of conditions that may arise. And the sorts of pregnancy complications that are common with extremely young patients includes that they're significantly more likely to develop high blood pressure in pregnancy, also known as preeclampsia, and they're 5 times more likely to have eclampsia, a condition associated with high blood pressure that causes seizures in pregnancy. Their babies were more likely to be born before 37 weeks, have a low birth weight, and need extra care in the NICU. There's a quote here from a doctor named Anne Ambia, who said, "I will never forget watching my young patient hold back tears while cradling the doll we gave her to represent her coming baby. We developed the adolescent pregnancy specialist team as a result of caring for this patient, and we think about her daily as we encounter new patient challenges and while I tuck my own girls into bed at night." This article also leads with another anecdote about an extremely young patient that says, "A few years back, a certified nurse midwife contacted me to consult about a patient with a complex pregnancy. The patient had been through a series of traumas and was receiving her first prenatal care close to 20 weeks into the pregnancy. She was in the extremely vulnerable 10 to 14 age range. She didn't know why her belly was getting bigger. She didn't understand what had been done to her, and she couldn't imagine how difficult life was about to become." For these young girls trapped in these immigrant detention facilities, the reality is even bleaker than what's in these case studies because these young girls don't necessarily have access to this type of medical care. They don't even have their freedom. They are being held in detention centers. They are essentially being imprisoned. And so are their infants from the second that they're born. A majority of these young girls who are pregnant in ICE detention facilities are pregnant as a result of sexual violence. Many of them were raped while making the journey to the United States to begin with. And now they'll receive no justice and instead a lifetime punishment over circumstances they never had a choice in. In addition to that sexual trauma and the medical trauma they're now facing, as well as all the traumas to come from being such an extraordinarily young parent with no support system, and in fact, the opposite of a support system, but rather a punitive system built around them. These girls also have to suffer the trauma of being detained, being arrested, being transported around the United States with no answers for them or justification for what's happening to them. One of the anonymous sources who spoke to Texas Public Radio said this group of kids is clearly recognized as our most vulnerable, and that rank and file staff are losing sleep over it, wondering if kids are going to be placed in programs where they're not going to have access to the care they need. Jonathan White, a longtime federal health official who used to run the unaccompanied children program during Trump's first term and recently retired, said this is 100% exclusively about abortion. Now they casually roll out what they brutally fought to accomplish last time and didn't. Texas Public Radio includes this image of an email that was sent in July 2025 from the Deputy Chief of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families, Office of Refugee Resettlement. She said, "Team, per the direction of Chief of Staff Matt O'Neill Levine, as of today, we should be placing any pregnant children into the San Benito program moving forward as directed by Director Salazar. Please work to ensure this directive is being coordinated between your teams." This is not how these federal programs have worked in the past, including during the first Trump administration, when officials then tried to move pregnant unaccompanied minors to places where they could not access abortion and were struck down by the courts. Back in 2017, the ACLU successfully challenged the Trump administration's refusal to permit teenage immigration detainees to access abortion services. This was a victory during Trump's first term That was largely possible because of the protection of Roe v. Wade, which guaranteed a federal right to abortion. Now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned, there's less legal precedent standing in the way of what the Trump administration is doing now, which is essentially trapping these victims of sexual violence in a place where they can't receive the care they need. It's essentially continuing that cycle of abuse, maintaining control over these girls' bodies and forcing them into a situation they never should have been in to begin with. According to Texas Public Radio's sources, several of the girls have already given birth at the San Benito facility and are detained with their infants. Reading this sentence is one of the most dystopian things I have done in a while, and that says a lot considering the day to day news cycle under the Trump administration. But this in particular is just so uniquely horrifying. To imagine a pregnant 13-year-old in jail, now in jail with her infant. The idea that this is about the sanctity of life is grotesque. This is a rejection of the sanctity of life. This is saying that these young girls and their babies don't matter at all, that we can just hide them away in windowless facilities and essentially leave them to rot with no opportunity and little support. Now, the context around this story is also the rollback of abortion rights in Texas, where abortion is currently illegal, including in cases of rape and incest. The only exception in Texas right now that allows an abortion to be performed legally is if it's to save the life of the mother or infant. But as we've already seen in multiple cases, that doesn't always happen because doctors are confused about what their legal rights actually are. So women have been left to bleed out in hospital parking lots. Pregnancies have ended, and women may never be able to get pregnant again as a result of this lack of medical care. This is just one of the many reasons why pro life anti abortion measures make no sense. They actually restrict the ability for women to be able to have children. They result regularly in the deaths of women and children. And with regards to these migrant children, there might not even be anyone around in the area who can help them if something goes wrong, because a lot of doctors have fled the state of Texas, and now maternity care is more limited than ever, especially in these more rural parts of the state. Doctors and medical institutions that are equipped to handle high risk pregnancies like these are oftentimes hours away from them. One quote from the article is several maternal health experts described a sobering list of dangers for the girls at the San Benito shelter. If one of them develops an ectopic pregnancy, where the fertilized egg implants outside the uterus, if she miscarries or if her water breaks too early and she gets an infection, the emergency care she needs could be delayed or denied by doctors wary of the abortion ban. Getting the care that is available could take too long to save her life or the baby's. Dr. Blair Cushing, who runs a women's health clinic about 45 minutes away from this facility, said, "You couldn't set up a worse scenario. I'm kind of blown away by the level of risk that they're concentrating in this facility." So, again, if you hear that this is about saving lives or protecting unborn children, it's actually the opposite of that. This endangers the lives of these young girls as well as their fetuses and babies, putting them at life threatening risk of not being able to access medicine they need. Not only that, but this specific immigration detention facility in San Benito already has a very poor track record of getting pregnant girls the care they need in a timely manner. According to a quote from the Texas Public Radio article, agency sources who spoke with the newsrooms said that as recently as 2024, staff members at the shelter failed to arrange timely medical appointments for pregnant girls or to immediately share critical health information with the federal agency. It discharged them without arrangements to continue their medical care. As a result of this, the ORR temporarily barred the shelter from receiving pregnant girls while they implemented a remediation plan. But that plan did not add any staff or enhance their qualifications. There are other shelters and other facilities outside the state that are better equipped to handle these high risk pregnancies, but the federal government is sending these girls to San Benito anyways. The reason is so clear. It's because they value denying the ability to get an abortion above all else. They don't care about the health and safety of pregnant women. They don't care about the health and safety of pregnant girls. They certainly don't care about the health outcomes for those girls or their babies because they are putting them in one of the most high risk places possible. This goes beyond negligence. This is not an accident. This is systemic state sanctioned abuse of pregnant girls, forcing them to give birth in terrible conditions, endangering the lives of them and their children. It's absolutely grotesque, and it was all laid out in Project 2025, which saw the overturning of Roe v. Wade as an opportunity to go about doing this after they failed during Trump's first term. They are desperate to force these pregnant girls to bear children, putting them in an even worse situation than they were in before. Why are they so desperate to do this? Well, I would suggest it has something to do with the systemic subjugation of this entire population. They want to keep these girls at the very margins of society. They want them to lead the worst lives possible. They ultimately want to continue this cycle of abuse that holds this population down away from opportunities that they otherwise could have had. And worst of all, an unnamed Health and Human Services spokesperson told conservative news outlet The Daily Signal that their goal is to save lives, both for these young children that are coming across the border that are pregnant and to save the lives of their unborn babies. Again, this is so nonsensical. This is so offensive. This is just downright grotesque and disgusting. It is so wrong to say that they want to save their lives when they are purposefully withholding them, keeping them away from facilities that are better suited to meet their medical needs. They are putting them in the most dangerous position possible. It is not about saving their lives. It has everything to do with making their lives worse. It has everything to do with creating a worse future and worse outcomes for these children and their children. For the independent news outlet Abortion Every Day, reporter Kylie Chung writes, at the same time, the Trump administration is effectively disappearing unaccompanied child rape victims to a forced birth camp. A staggering amount of federal funds are being diverted from people in poverty to fund anti abortion crisis pregnancy centers. This is not an isolated problem within the Trump administration or the broader Republican Party and conservative movement. This is part of a playbook. That playbook is to erode women's rights and bodily autonomy. We've seen it play out over years, even decades. This is the same playbook that allowed Trump to return to office and to be able to force these young girls to give birth in dangerous conditions. It's very clear what the overarching goals are here, and they have nothing to do with keeping women and girls safe. They want to put our lives at risk, and they already have and have done so repeatedly and will continue to do so as long as they're allowed and nobody stops them. Since the original Texas Public Radio reporting, at least a dozen young girls have been sent to this facility. What awaits them there? What types of health complications might they have to endure? What is their day to day life like, hidden away from the rest of society, forced to carry these babies to term that they don't even necessarily understand? The amount of trauma these young girls have already experienced, and the amount of trauma that is in store for them because of the Trump administration and this brutal Republican regime, it's difficult to even wrap your head around or try to comprehend. It's absolutely deplorable, and allowing them to wage this playbook around the United States to roll back abortion rights and access to reproductive health, well, that's what brought us here to this happening today. These terrifying crimes against humanity were made possible because of the anti abortion movement and its decades of work to advance their ideological goals. It's work that's deeply entwined with Project 2025 and the conservative movement's overarching plan to further subjugate women, especially women and girls of color. It's disgusting, and it needs to stop.